Live from a NASCAR bunker in Kyle's parents' basement, it's Turn the Radio Off with Mike Parsons and Kyle Bauer.
A fan at Facebook.com/TTRO Show. Follow along on Twitter.com/TTRO Show. Or just listen right now. It's Turn the Radio Off.
All right, we as Americans need to admit something. Not a single one of us, well, I wouldn't say not a single one of us, the vast majority of us never even heard the term Brexit until the UK had already voted to leave the European Union.
I had heard of it a couple weeks prior, but I didn't follow up on it much because it sounded like such a stupid idea. I was thinking, why the hell would Britain want to do this? So I didn't really follow up on it more. I thought the vote would come, it would pass, get shot down like 70-30. And apparently my naivety was rooted in too much common sense.
Well, here's the thing, too, all right? That's the other thing I heard from people. Oh, I heard about it a while ago, but I didn't really look into it. But what I'm most amazed is the ability of people to have a full opinion on something just minutes after they hear about it.
That's the age that we live in.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I do this show most of the time.
That's true. Well, in our defense, we have an hour to kill, so we might as well just throw stuff out at the wall. But, yeah, you're right. And you know, it's very interesting what the demographics were. In England, the vast majority of elderly voters voted to Brexit. And by the way, I like how these referendums have cute names over there in England. How charmingly British. But the overwhelming majority of elderly voters, I don't know what exactly the age break, I would say 45 plus, chose to leave the European Union, and the vast majority of younger voters chose to stay, which again, much like Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign here in the United States, shows that the youth vote is mostly obsolete.
I think it's interesting that time and time again, and we're seeing it now in Europe with the kind of nationalist sentiment that has been occurring over there, brought on by the whole refugee issue, that older people, despite all the change that they've seen in their lifetime, a lot of them are so stubborn, so fearful, so rooted in their ways, and I don't know if it's just time beating them down. I don't know exactly what it is that they develop these prejudices. I don't want to say lack of education because, you know, one thing that always strikes me is that education quality, despite having seemingly more resources, has been going down in the United States for some time. I can't speak for Britain, but I'm just saying in the westernized world, we're not putting the same emphasis on education that we once did. Okay, and sure, there are more nuances now. There are more resources. But to me, this whole idea that, these older people were blue-collar, they're less educated, I'm having a harder and harder time buying that as time goes on, and I'm thinking that the older you get, the more capitalistic forces take over, the more your prejudices and your fears set in, the more bitterness you attain, and the more you just want to say, damn everyone who isn't in my home, even if that means possibly sinking my very own country just to keep brown people out.
Well, and here's the thing. I have to be honest, Kyle. I have no idea what this is going to mean for the British economy. I have no idea what it's going to mean for the world economy.
It's not predicting good things, and it hasn't been good so far.
Well, you know, the 2 days, when did the vote come down? Wednesday, I think Thursday and Friday, the stock market tumbled, but then it rebounded today. And, you know, there's a lot of different narratives out there. And I have to say, like I said, I have to admit I was caught flat-footed on this. I don't know if this – to me, this – this seems like it's been a failure in coverage. And, I
think so many people thought that it would have been voted down. And even in polling, it was...
But see, don't you think that this would have been a great news story for people to jump on, especially... What do I always say? The only thing that sells better than sex is fear and panic. So don't you think this would have kept people glued to their TVs with the pendulum of England leaving the European Union swinging over you?
Well, we already have our fear and paranoia mongerer.
That's true. I guess it's closer to
why
home.
Why take our eyes off of him, even if it's for something like this?
Well, I don't like to use the word conspiracy theorists because I feel like it's derogatory. But I don't know what other word to use to describe a lot of my friends who, conspiracy theorists, and they're always putting out this what I normally think is a false platitude. Oh, what are they really planning while they're distracting us with all this other news? But I would say that you could point to this as an example. This is something that seemed to happen out of nowhere that seems like it could very well have ramifications for the world itself, and we didn't hear about it until it happened. Now, in the news cycle's defense, what's been in the news recently have been important issues: gun control, gun safety, the U.S. election. So I'm not going to kill them on that, but still, like I said, I didn't hear about it till it happened. I feel like I'm somewhat more plugged in than the average news consumer. Kyle, I consider you to be very plugged in. That's part of the reason I like doing the show with you, because you seem to have a knowledge on just about every topic, and even you heard very scant little about it.
And again, but I think that's because I didn't really invest into it. Like, I knew this was something that was a possibility, but again, it sounded so absurd, so nearsighted, so poorly thought out that I was thinking, oh, well, they'll surely vote this down.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of alarming that this is even coming to a referendum, but surely this has no legs.
Right.
It couldn't.
Well, and here are the three sort of narratives I've heard as to how we got here. Number one, that folks in the UK are so afraid of immigrants that they have chosen to break away from the European Union. And a lot of people are comparing it to Texas leaving. But I can also see where older voters would vote to become independent, because I think the UK joined the European Union in 1973. So there's a lot of older voters.
Form of it. The EU in its current incarnation is about 15, 16 years old.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. I can't find any solid information as to the timeline here, so I'm kind of talking about this line.
Current incarnation of it, though.
I know the euro became a thing in 1999, but I read ascension date for the UK to the European Union. It was like 1973.
It was 20 years ago.
Okay, so there is a big contingent of elderly voters who remember not being part of the EU, and we talk about nostalgia all the time. Things were better 20 years ago, so that may have led to their decision, not just xenophobia, just remembering the good old days of when Europe was a sovereign nation. And then the other thing is that, look, England is one of the strongest economies in all of Europe, and they got sick of having to carry the dead weight of, say, Greece, another country that's not that's not doing too well. So those are the three theories that I hear, and like I said, Kyle, I'm not educated enough on the topic to say which one's right. I would imagine, just like everything else, it's a mix of all. It's a mix of all three, and probably even more factors that I don't know of. But on the topic of this being a racist decision, I'm going to put out a theory here that not everybody who voted for the Brexit was racist. But if you were racist, you probably voted for the Brexit.
Yeah, which is similar to a theory that you could form on a lot of Trump voters.
And you know what? Another hot take that just kind of made me scratch my head in all of this are the think pieces now that, with the Brexit vote, we need to come to the realization of the possibility that Donald Trump could be our next president. And you know how I love to say, I told you so, Kyle. You know, I've been saying that since last summer, and you came around to that realization for a couple months ago.
It took me a while, yeah.
It's like, yes, Donald Trump, number one, it seemed like he had no chance in hell of getting the Republican nomination. Now he's got the nomination, so yes, there is a 50-50 chance he could be our next president of the United States, and we should have realized that whether or not the UK left the European Union or not.
And obviously this white nationalism is something of concern because you wonder where exactly it comes from, and I don't, I obviously don't have the knowledge to diagnose that, but one thing that I have noticed, and I've kind of thought this similarly to Trump, is that when you have a group of a demographic that's been in power for so long, and let's just put it on there that it's a straight white male, age 18 to 65, right? When they have so much power for so long, and you see the power structure naturally erode. I mean, some forces have obviously, in the United States, the Civil Rights Act, suffrage movement, various things have cut into that power through legislation. But for the most part, we're seeing just immigration. We're seeing the Latino population expand. We're seeing, just kind of these large movements of people, these large migrations of people coming into white land, coming into white territory, the territories that were seen as white powers, white strongholds. And I think when you have a ruling class that has been used for hundreds of years of ruling, suddenly there's just the slightest bit of pushback, even though they still pull all the strings, and it's well established they still do. Even seeing the slightest bit of pushback or the slightest bit of dissent has thrown everyone's armor up. Well, it's a really weird phenomenon.
And I think human nature makes you skeptical and fearful of people who don't look like you. So the majority of people in power start seeing an influx of people who don't look like them, they get a little bit skittish. Well, and that's an understatement. I guess leaving an entire I'm not going to say nation because European Union isn't a nation, but leaving an entire group of countries, that's more than a little bit skittish.
Yeah, wanting to separate yourself from the rest of the continent.
But like I said, a lot of people are comparing this to Texas leaving the United States because Texas has long talked about succeeding from the United States, which I say, hey, go ahead, good luck.
Vermont has too.
Yeah.
I'd be scared. And I would say, though, that if Texas did that, and I mean, any sort of further destabilization of Europe, financially or otherwise, is scary. And, the gears begin to turn and seeing, the specter of a war reaching that part of Europe over something like this. You see as a possibility. But I always said, the idea of Texas leaving would scare the hell out of me.
Because Texas would try to invade and...
Exactly. Are you kidding me? And all the oil and military resources that they already have there to begin with, they would totally... What they would do is they would basically annex the rest of the Southeast, and they'd start a new civil war.
Maybe Vermont should leave first as a trial run.
Yeah.
But see, I don't see this as Texas seceding from the United States. I see this more as... the United States becoming sort of a group of nations with Canada and Mexico and South America for 30 years, and then America saying, I don't want to I don't want to be part of this anymore. I guess it'd be more like the United States leaving NAFTA.
Yeah.
More so than
or the UN, which
right.
Sarah Palin has talked about, the U.S. leaving the UN or
and
something
you know what?
to that extent.
I got to say, I have no idea what the effects of the U.S. leaving the UN would be, because I really don't know what, if anything, the UN does other than just make statements or condemn things.
I mean, I'll just look at it this way. Sovereignty can be a very good thing, but the problem with the impact of Britain leaving, and when you consider that London is a financial epicenter in the Western world, when you take all that into consideration, it is really frightening because, yeah, you can talk about sovereignty all you want. I notice a lot of my libertarian and conservative friends were really celebrating this move. And they were citing that, that it's disbanding a global government. It's disbanding.
It's a shot against the globalists.
But the problem is that globalism has long started. Globalism has been in play since the end of World War II. To extent it existed even before then. I mean, globalism has always existed as long as there has been world trade. You can't stop it. It is what it is. And once the rules have been established, when you're a country of that power, you hold a responsibility to play by the rules for the sake of everyone else. Well, it's just what you've gotten yourself into as a government, as an economy, as a world power. As a collective people, you have to uphold your responsibility to the rest of the world and not be a bunch of selfish pricks that just went ahead and shot themselves in the head because they were scared of brown people.
Well, and you know what, Kyle? My prediction right now, my uneducated opinion, is that this really won't have any long-term impacts. I think a lot of people are afraid that other countries are going to see this, and they're going to start breaking away from the European Union. But, Scotland chose to stay, much to the contrary of what Donald Trump tweeted out. And I think there were 2 or 3 other countries that chose to stay. But here's the thing. Right now, the UK is still part of the European Union because they have to work trade deals and everything out with the European Union. So even though they're not part of the European Union, they're still going to be beholden to rules and agreements that they make with the European Union. So I really don't know if this is anything more than symbolic, to be honest.
I think it could be a lot more than symbolic, and I think the fact that they already had their credit rating stripped, the fact that we've already seen such significant losses and destabilization in all the world markets, I think this could end up being a larger problem. And again, I don't like the idea of a world power willfully destabilizing themselves for the sake of racism, for the sake of nationalism, for the sake of xenophobia, for the sake of white pride, which basically that's what this was for. You're setting a very, very dangerous precedent, not necessarily for any other countries, but for yourself. How are you going to operate and function as a government if you can't accept immigration? How are you going to function and operate as a democracy, as something that anything other than a dictatorship, if you don't give people the freedom to come and go as they choose, obviously with rules and regulations, but also how are you going to shut yourself off to the rest of a continent that desperately needs you in a time where you still have war raging in the Middle East, and you will continue to? If you don't think that this isn't something ISIS or anyone else in the Middle East is looking at right now, you'd probably be wrong.
What was that line from The Watchmen? The European Union will look at the UK and say, help us. And the UK will look back at the European Union and say, no. Let's turn the radio off on the internet.
Less rock, more talk. Turn the radio off.
Become a fan at peoplehatemypodcast.com.
I'm Polly Pocket. Want to see what's new? Really fun compacts just for you. Polly Pocket has a stage where she dances ballet. In her shiny tutu, so pretty today. Polly Pocket. Polly's water fun park, a big slide for the pair. Then happy birthday it's a bear. Polly Pocket, Polly Pocket. Now there's lots more ways to have a Polly day.
Polly Pocket Party Time Surprise, Water Fun Park, and Ballerina Polly Compacts are each sold separately.
Mr. Bucket.
That's right. I'm Mr. Bucket. I'm Mr. Bucket. Toss your balls in my top. I'm Mr. Bucket. Out of my mouth I will pop. I'm Mr. Bucket. We're all gonna run. I'm Mr. Bucket.
The game's Mr. Bucket. The first to get their balls into Mr. Bucket wins, but look out, because the balls will pop out of his mouth.
I'm Mr. Bucket. The balls pop out of my mouth. I'm Mr. Bucket. A ball is what I'm about. I'm Mr. Bucket. We're all gonna run. I'm Mr. Bucket.
Mr. Bucket from Milton Bradley.
Bucket for fun.
Turn the radio off. Tell your friends about us. Make them like us on Facebook.
I am not sure if we are broadcasting properly.
Turn the radio off. Online and worldwide. TTROshow.com.
Just one final thought on this whole Brexit thing. I know one little guy who's very happy about this and very relieved. 13-year-old Mike Parsons, who, ever since he saw Ancient Prophecies at the age of 9, he was just terrified of the apocalypse. Now, eventually got over that once the year 2000 came and went, and there was no apocalypse. But I remember I used to watch that stuff on TV. It would scare the crap out of me, and I'd always go to this website. Is Rapture Ready or Doomsday Clock or something? And it would move the clock closer to midnight. And I remember one time it was like at 11:59 and 50 seconds, and it was in 1999 when the euro was signed into law, and euro was the new form of currency throughout most of the European Union, and that was heading towards one world government, which was a sign of the apocalypse. So now that it turns out that the European Union is probably about as obsolete as the United Nations, 13-year-old Mike Parsons can relax that the apocalypse has been thwarted up until now. Or maybe a new apocalypse is emerging. I really don't know.
Fortunately, I kind of feel like we're closer to the latter there.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let me tell you about a mindset that I've adopted. You and I have talked on the show many times about our weird obsession with death. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of gotten over it. And now when I'm nervous about something, I just say to myself, the worst thing that could happen is you die. And then after you're dead, there's nothing else bad can happen. So there you go, kids. As you lay your head down to sleep tonight and you're worried about turmoil in Europe. What's that?
It's a turmoil everywhere.
Yeah, turmoil in Europe on top of the turmoil in the Middle East. If there's an apocalypse, worst thing happens is we all die.
Fair point.
Yeah, so there you go. Sleep tight. Does Game of Thrones take place in England? I don't watch Game of Thrones at all.
I don't either.
And I think this is the first time in my life I feel like I'm missing out on something culturally.
I still do not.
Really? That's good. Well, and let me tell you why. You know, I never felt like I was missing out on anything with The Walking Dead, with Mad Men, with Breaking Bad. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe I have a bias against AMC. But, you know, for the most part, I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But all over, it feels like my Facebook feed is full of memes in a language I don't understand. In fact, I'm just going to start assuming that if there's something on the internet that I don't that I don't know what it is, it has something to do with Game of Thrones. Maybe that's why I never heard of Brexit. I saw hashtag Brexit, had no idea what the hell it is. Probably thought, probably something with Game of Thrones.
Probably a Game of Thrones character.
Brexit on Game of Thrones married his sister and got killed last night on Game of Thrones. But follow me here on this, Kyle. I think that Game of Thrones might be the new Seinfeld. And
that'd be really sad if, as a culture, we've gone from celebrating a kind of quirky, pointless, awkward show to
well, I say that because it seemed like in the late 90s, back when I was fearing the apocalypse, any cultural reference that I didn't quite understand, it was always a Seinfeld reference. No soup for you. Not like there's anything wrong with that. I don't know. You can there's a millions of Seinfeld references that I know through cultural osmosis. But the first time I would hear any of these lines from Seinfeld, I either wouldn't get it. I would think it was something funny the person that I was talking to came up with, or I was watching SportsCenter, because those were littered with Seinfeld references in the 90s.
See, Seinfeld was something I was on board with, and I think, you can't sell Seinfeld today. Wouldn't take place in front of a studio audience, and probably wouldn't be on NBC.
Yeah,
I think that's like the one key difference now culturally, is that the show wouldn't work in that platform. I don't even know if it'd have the quirky music, you know, the slap bass. Yeah, I don't even know if it'd have that. Like, it would, I can imagine a show with that humor existing and being very popular.
Like on HBO or Netflix, or maybe even TBS.
No, not TBS.
Okay, HBO or
yeah,
Netflix.
but yeah, it would be an off-network show, and it would be probably a little bit more dry, and a little more dark, and like I could see it being popular today still, but at the time, yeah, everybody was into that, and I was too. It was like a freaking 10-year-old. I mean, I loved Seinfeld as a little kid, and now today, of course, similar to The Simpsons and King of the Hill, the older you get, you know, the more you appreciate a lot of the humor that went over your head.
Right.
So, I mean, it's aged well for me. So back then, I got all the references, and I was in on all that stuff.
Yeah, you know, with Seinfeld, back when it was on, it was a bit over my head, because I probably wasn't as smart and observant as you were at that age. And when I end up watching it, you know, I enjoy it fine, but it's just something that I will not watch unless there's absolutely nothing else on TV, and I don't know why. But there was a point in my life where I was really annoyed with Seinfeld, because I would tell somebody a story about what happened to me, or I would tell them about one of my personal preferences, and people would say, oh, yeah, that's like that Seinfeld episode where George Costanza has too much crap in his wallet.
Right.
And after a while, I'm like, you people are just dicking with me, because you know I don't watch Seinfeld. So now everything I say, there's a Seinfeld episode. Like that one time that Kramer went out to a restaurant for Jerry's birthday, and he didn't know that there were cashews in the non-dairy cheesecake, so his face ballooned up like American Werewolf in Paris, and he had to go to the emergency room. Tell me that was a Seinfeld episode, Kyle.
In a modern day, yeah, like that'd be a good modern day Seinfeld episode.
There is a funny Twitter account called Modern Day Seinfeld.
Can you imagine Jerry going on a riff about vegan cheesecake?
It's not even cheese nor cake. No, that's more like coffee talk. It's neither cheese nor cake. Discuss.
But yeah, I've often been compared to George Costanza. Often have been compared to George Costanza, and that, which works because the other person I'm often compared to is Larry David.
Yeah.
So, and of course,
it's
the
funny.
two are Costanza's based off of Larry David.
Right. It's funny, though, because I never watched Seinfeld, but for 6 months I lived at a place that got HBO. And for those 6 months, it was the Curb Your Enthusiasm season about the Seinfeld reunion. That's the only season of Curb Your Enthusiasm that I watched, and I loved it.
Which the season where his wife leaves him for George, where basically where she leaves him for Jason Alexander as he's portraying his Costanza character.
Let's see. Okay, so there's a Twitter page, Modern Seinfeld. Kramer thinks the NSA is spying on him, so he goes off the grid, except he uses Jerry's phone, computer, and email. You're just on my grid. Oh, I guess that's Jerry. You're just on my grid. I don't know why my Seinfeld sounds like Rob Parker, but, you know, you get the idea. But some of these are pretty good. I don't know. I guess maybe I'll tell you one thing. If Seinfeld was on, now, there'd be a better chance I watched that than if Friends was on right now.
Do you think that would actually happen again? Like, we're all building towards that, right? Like, Julia Louis-Dreyfus has had all the success she's had with Veep.
Yeah. By the way, she looks better now than she did back then.
And
not that there's anything wrong with that. See, I can't even use the Seinfeld references correctly.
Yeah, what Seinfeld has is driving
in cars with comedians.
Driving in cars with comedians.
Which sounds like a great concept, yet I've never gotten around to watching it.
Same here. I haven't watched it either. And then,
or comedians in cars getting coffee. That's
something
what
like that.
Yeah.
And then Michael Richards.
Yeah.
Actually, do you wonder if he's the one thing holding that show, a reunion, up?
I don't know. Do you know why? Because I think enough time has passed, people have forgotten about it, and even if they haven't, I don't think people are mad anymore. But that's coming from a white guy. So, but who watches Seinfeld? White people.
That's true. But he did say, "quote We used to hang you people from trees."
Yeah.
That's there's not really any way getting around that one.
I don't know.
That's pretty.
See, to me, Jerry, I get the feeling Jerry Seinfeld probably wouldn't do it again.
He doesn't seem like the type that would, or else he would have done it by now.
Right.
Yet, I do wonder sometimes, because there's a Super Bowl commercial a couple of years ago. Yeah. There was where him and George are in the updated version of Monks, which I hate the remodel of Monks, by the way.
What is Monks?
What is the
that?
Diner that they eat in all the time and have their conversations. And they remodeled Monks for the commercial, which is probably accurate.
Well, you know...
But I still, you know how I hate change. I did not care for the new version of Monks that they portrayed in this ad. Anyway, though, there was that, and like I said, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is as popular as she's been since she was Elaine. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, seriously, it's I could see it on the horizon
Netflix.
If it wasn't for Michael Richards.
Yeah, that sounds like something that's ripe for Netflix, because Netflix is all about the nostalgia.
Netflix is going to burn themselves out, though. And I think they kind of did with Fuller House.
Fuller House got a second season. And
did
you know
it?
what? I watched the whole first season, and it actually turned into a decent, stupid sitcom on its own. Like, the first episode of Fuller House was just one long Jimmy Fallon bit. And then,
oh, God, that sounds terrible.
Right. It's like, okay, let's get all of our references in this first episode. And then it turns into, like, as a standalone sitcom by itself, I'd give it a 6.5. And it got a second season. But you know what? People like me who, I never watch my Netflix. I always do this thing where I'll buy Netflix for a couple months because there's something I want to watch on it, and then I'll stop subscribing. I subscribe just to watch Fuller House.
See, I don't know. They got all these Netflix original shows now, and they keep pushing them to the front of the page, of course. And
oh yeah,
and I mean, I can't.
You have to promote your content.
I can't even keep up with them. Like, I still haven't seen that Master of None, Aziz Ansari show that I heard so much about, and got these Emmy nominations and stuff. And
you know what I heard nothing about? No buzz. The David Spade, Adam Sandler Netflix movie.
They've had. Here's the thing, Netflix. And this is why I talk about why I believe Netflix will eventually shoot themselves in the foot.
Yeah,
because they do stupid things like give Adam Sandler a movie deal, which is what they did.
You know what though? I watched that movie because I love David Spade.
Oh, did you? How was it?
It was kind of subversive, actually. David Spade, he played this guy. He manages a bank in a supermarket, and his life is just crap. He marries the most popular girl in high school, but she's still banging the loser dude she dated. And so they do this thing, and it's far-fetched, obviously, but it's a movie where they fake their own deaths because Adam Sandler's like a former police agent or something, and anyway, so they assume these identities of these rich guys, and a bunch of people are after them because the guy whose identity they assumed found a cure for cancer, and there's people who are trying to kill him because there's profit motive in cancer. So it's this Happy Gilmore-esque movie, but it's got this very sort of heavy woke conspiracy theorist underlying theme. It was really weird. And plus, there was a lot of new country music in it, which I guess Adam Sandler's now a big country music fan.
Of course he is.
It's very odd. I wouldn't.
Just like how he was such a big rap fan 10 years ago.
Yeah. Well, he for a long time though, all of his movies had like kitschy 80s hits in it. Now it's like new country. But like if I went to like MJR and paid $12 to see it, I'd be pissed. But if I saw it at the Dollar Show, I'd say, okay. So I watched it for free on Netflix. I said, you know what? There's worse ways I could have spent an hour 45.
Fish in a barrel, I guess, is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, see, I don't think Netflix is going to shoot itself in the foot because if the original stuff they're putting out sucks, then they could just make money on stuff that's already been made.
But the problem is, though, is that they keep cutting stuff that has been popular on Netflix, or they keep reducing the amount that they have available. Like SVU was a big one where originally they had SVU and then they just cut it down to like one select season or a couple of the more recent seasons, and that pissed a lot of people off. King of the Hill was a notorious one a few years ago where they axed King of the Hill, which I don't believe was their final call. I think it was another thing where Fox was screwing with Mike Judge some more.
Yeah.
And they jerked up the licensing fees for it or something like that, made it so Netflix couldn't afford it.
You know what I watch a lot on Netflix? Documentaries about the porn industry.
Really?
Yeah. It's interesting.
So that's what Netflix, though, should be. I like that side of Netflix that is documentaries and, like, stuff like that. But I'm just saying, I've seen all these original shows now, and they're getting rid of a lot of stuff that worked on there in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I see Netflix being a runaway train. It's a disruptor, Kyle. It's the new way things are being done.
Well, I mean, Hulu's like trying to gear up to go after them.
Right.
I don't get me wrong. I see Netflix like changing the game in a sense that I could see cable and satellite having to do more networks having to go to more packages that include live streaming, free streaming, on-demand streaming of their shows. So, yeah, I think they've permanently changed things. I'm just saying, like, if they get too big for their britches, even though it took Comcast 30 years, similar to the way Comcast has, they, too, can crumble upon themselves. And like I said, doing things like giving Adam Sandler movie deals, maybe not the savviest move.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would have to see the numbers. Netflix subscriptions, pre-Adam Sandler movie deal, and post-Adam Sandler movie deal. Let's turn the radio off on the internet.
Turn the radio off with Machine Gun Mike Parsons.
And guess what? Life isn't fair. You don't always get what you want.
And Kyle Avocado Bauer.
Oh, zombie preparedness kit. I'm a zombie. Lols, lols, lols.
We'll be back in seconds. Turn the radio off. With more Turn the radio off. On the internet.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
I was off-roading in the backcountry.
Oh, not surprising. You've got your home. Bears have theirs.
Yeah, but see, this wasn't just any bear. This bear was wearing jeans and a hat, as in a Smokey Bear.
Jeans and a hat. That's definitely Smokey. What exactly did he have to say?
Well, I was about to start up my ATV on a trail near a bunch of dry brush.
Oh, I can guess where this is going.
Right. Smokey told me that was dangerous because ATVs give off sparks, and one spark can start a wildfire.
That's true. Did you know that 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans? That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Wow, no kidding?
I'm a forest ranger. We never kid.
Sorry.
that was a joke.
Oh.
Get your Smokey on. If you see someone in danger of starting a wildfire, step in and make a difference, because 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at SmokeyBear.com. Only you can prevent wildfires.
Switch off the radio. Turn off the radio. Shut down your radio system.
We'll do it live!
What?
I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Turn the radio off. There you go. I'm drunk.
So after I had forgotten all about him, Charles Pugh pops up in the news again because he was finally arrested, is being brought up on charges of 6 counts of sexual assault, but pretty much what it is, it's stemming from a sexual relationship that he started in 2003 with a minor who he met. And this is the creepiest part to me, Kyle. A lot of these details I forgot all about. Former city councilman Charles Pugh and his inappropriate relationship with a minor child that he was mentoring. The creepiest part to me, on top of all the grooming and sort of all the money and power plays that he used to seduce or get young men to do sexual favors with him, was the fact that this particular child, whose mother has been fighting to bring him up on charges, he met when he was an anchor at Fox 2 when the singer came in to the station with the Music Youth Choir, which is it's a group, as far as I know, of underprivileged kids who join a choir, and it's supposed to kind of give them directions and keep them out of trouble and all of that. And to me, that was very creepy because it seemed like, for someone with the predatory type mentality he had, that this to him was almost like lame prey.
Yeah, and he was using his job, which really, looking back, makes it especially heartbreaking. I mean, first, all your sentiments are with his at least one victim that we know of.
Absolutely.
But secondly, you think of how you watched Fox 2 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Charles Pugh was a very popular, affable host.
Right. And you know what, Kyle? I watched Charles Pugh on Fox 2. I would listen to his public affairs show on JLB, That's What's Up.
Yeah.
And I liked him. And you know what? I
liked him too.
When these stories first came down, if he would have stuck around and said, these are all lies, they're trying to extort me for money, I probably would have believed them, except for the fact that he fled town as soon as the allegations started flying.
And it's difficult for me to fathom too, because I remember all the broad amount of support he got when he went to city council.
Yeah.
And the prevailing thought was, here's Charles Pugh, someone who is on the front lines and reporting the terrible corruption in city council. He knows better than anyone how to clean it up. And instead, he ended up being just as much a part of it as anyone.
Yeah.
And also did far more sinister things with his power. I mean, it really is a very tragic and disgusting story, and I'm glad that we're finally seeing justice be brought into motion here.
Right. And, these text messages, I mean, back then they were disturbing, but I don't know if this was in a text message or if it was overheard in conversation, but Charles Pugh said that, look, if the kid's poor enough, he can get them to do anything.
Oh.
And yeah, just stuff like that makes your stomach churn, because this kid originally reached out to Charles Pugh
for mentorship
because he wanted to get into the TV business, and he reached out to Pugh for an internship, and Pugh, licking his chops, had no interest in helping the kid. He only had interest in helping himself to the kid. And like I said, I don't know why, but the fact that he met him at Fox 2 as a member of the Mosaic Youth Theater, to me, that's probably the creepiest thing about it.
It really is disturbing that, again, he met this kid in a vulnerable position, and he did everything that he could to exploit his vulnerability like a true predator. And it makes me believe, the way how calculating he was with this, that this victim was not the only one.
Right.
That there were more, children who may come forward, or more, teenagers who may come forward after this. You hope it's the only one, but I got a sinking suspicion that it's not, just because of how calculating this was. It seems like this was something that he had down pat.
Yeah.
And again, it really, tarnishes. Well, his legacy was already well tarnished, but I mean, it really tarnishes, like looking back, kind of nostalgically on how the city viewed Charles Pugh as a media personality. You know, somewhat as a news person, but more so as a personality. He did a lot of the weekend shows. He did the morning show,
which he wasn't a great news anchor, but you still liked him.
But he wasn't a great news anchor, but again, he was a personality.
Right.
You know, anytime there was a...
Right, he was a smiling, friendly face
exactly.
on television.
And he was well-liked.
Yeah. And I think what happens is he came out of two worlds where there's a lot of yes people and a lot of power that goes to your head. In media, of course, and then in city council, local politics. And really, the hero of this story is this victim's mother. Because, she was shut down. I'm sure she was intimidated. Charles Pugh tried to buy her off time and time again. And she said, no, I'm going to fight for my child. This is not over. I don't care how long it takes, and it took a long time, and now he's being brought to justice. Now, obviously, it's not going to undo the damage that Charles Pugh did. I mean, like I said, just thinking about... I mean, I think back to when I was trying to break into the media business, right? And any contact, any in, was very exciting. And luckily, I never ran across anything like this where I've been victimized or taken advantage of.
So Jim Harper was on the straight and narrow. I'm happy to hear that.
Right. And I'm not just talking about sexually taken advantage of, but, taken advantage of or lied to and misled in any way. So obviously, this kid, his career was over before it even began. And at least he's being brought to justice, and at least it's going to take away the likelihood that he's going to be able to victimize anyone again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Pugh and I think back to just again, not only did he flee, but he tried to cloak himself in total anonymity, and he was spotted in New York as a server at a restaurant in New York. Like think about going from a city politician, which, by the way, what kind of cover-up job was he working there that he goes from television host to city politician to server at a New York City restaurant?
Well, I think since it was local, and far enough away, he was able to sort of live in relative anonymity. Now, every now and then, a news reporter would pop up and surprise him.
What the hell went on his resume, though? Did he use his actual name? Did they not Google him?
I don't know.
I mean, seriously, how? I'm wondering how the hell he got to that point.
He probably knew a lot of people, right? And he probably knew someone who had an in. He was living in Harlem. And, he probably knew someone who eventually, and this is weird to say because you don't think of using your connections to get a job as a server, but I think it shows kind of how badly he messed up.
Yeah.
That, he probably had a buddy or something who owned a restaurant in Harlem, and he said, look, man, I need you to help me out. These people are trying to entrap me. You got to help me out. So I don't know. Or maybe in New York, they're so hard up for servers that they'll say, okay, here's an apron. If you can hack it, you got a job. I don't know, but that's a very good question.
I guess that's a possibility too.
I guess I'm speculating at this point. He moved to Harlem, and I remember after it happened, I don't know if he was putting this out or people were just speculating like I was just doing, but I remember when they couldn't find him, a lot of people thought he was there was a story going around. He was in a hotel in Southfield with a gun to his head or something.
Yeah, he was suicidal.
Which
I remember that. Yeah,
and that's back when there was still a possibility in your mind that these accusations were false. And I think they were trying to garner some sympathy. And I think for a lot of people it worked.
I didn't really doubt the accusations. I mean, especially since they were in text message.
Yeah.
I mean, that's about as concrete as it gets.
But I remember for a while they said there were text messages, but the text messages weren't released yet.
Yeah.
And that was sort of that gray period. And obviously, shame on me because, now usually my first instinct is to believe the alleged victim. But back then, smiling guy on TV, city council president, smart guy, he's not stupid enough to do something like this.
Yeah. Well, it's not about whether or not he's stupid enough. It's
right.
He's a pedophile. He's got a problem that he's got to get off, and he, unfortunately targets children in doing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what you saw.
Yeah.
And he got busted for it.
Yeah. So, very disappointing, and, God, I forgot. I forgot all about that until this week.
Oh, I did. It was always in the back of my head because it was just such an astonishing fall from grace. It was such a weird career arc. To go from TV host to city council president to
convict, fugitive server.
To server.
Yeah.
To fugitive. To, down to pedophile. So
another story that we've talked about in the illustrious 5 years we've been doing this, Kyle, is this pilot program that Michigan was testing out. Drug testing welfare program recipients. And when did this start?
2014, I believe.
Yeah, well, it says the program began in October. I think it might have been...
it must have been introduced in 2014. Okay.
But it's a pilot program, which I applaud, because if you're going to try something out like this... you should test it out on a small sample size before implementing it statewide. This program, where they drug-tested welfare recipients, started in October in 3 different counties. It instituted a 50-question screening questionnaire that can prompt officials to order a drug test. And as of May, 303 people were tested, and not a single one came back. And this is a trend that we've seen in other states. In just about every state that I've heard of where they have been drug testing people on welfare, it has been a colossal failure, and the government actually loses way more money on these drug tests that come back negative than they save holding welfare benefits from people on drugs.
And again, I just love the assumption that because these people are on welfare that they don't have the rights.
Right.
That, well, one, there's 2 different ththings working here. One, the whole idea that because they're on welfare, they're screw-ups who can't stay sober.
Right.
Or they're trying to get another fix in, because they're already busy enough gaming the system. That means they must be on meth and cocaine and crack and whatever else you have.
And there's a 3-word sentence, Kyle, that never fails to spark outrage. Your tax dollars.
Right. And
I don't want my tax dollars going to substitute some junkies have it. Well, it turns out that they're not.
And also right, and then also this idea too that you can punish them.
Right.
You can punish people on welfare by restricting. Drugs aren't legal, but still you're restricting their ability to go about their daily lives, and you're holding them to a standard that other people don't have to be held to. If people smoke marijuana in their own home. Or do cocaine.
But they're doing it on their own dime. They're not doing it with my tax dollars.
Still, though, it's the whole assumption that they would be, though. And that's the problem. And I think this is just another showing of conservative arrogance turning into legislative failure.
Well, and like I said, for all the failings that Rick Snyder has had recently, for this one, in a weird way, I kind of applaud him because he knew that he tested out a small sample size before instituting it, and it looks like it's not going to be further implemented because of the almighty dollar. So in that case, all right. Good job.
It was a ridiculous notion in the first place, though. Just one of many that he's had that he's skated away from. Drug testing welfare recipients, allowing Detroit public schools to rot the way that they have, putting emergency managers in a vast majority of black-populated cities, of heavily black-populated cities, and then, of course, the whole Flint water crisis. I mean, just going down the line, look at what all this legislation or lack of action affects.
But one thing, when I saw this posted, a friend of mine posted it. I said, save this article for the next time you see the meme going around the internet. Drug welfare recipients should be drug tested. Share if you agree. And then put it underneath. Yeah. Put that underneath.
Well, the whole idea that, again, it's not only is it racism, but it's also classism. The whole idea that, again, if they're making minimum wage or if they're making welfare, they must have some sort of problem or they must be abusing the system somehow. So we must continue to punish them or halt any progress that they have a chance at making.
You're right. It does seem punitive because if you think about it, okay, all right, so you cut off the benefits to the drug addict, right? Okay, well, what about the people who depend on the other people who depend on that, the addict's kids or the families, or you know what I'm saying? It's not just the drug addict who is being punished here. And if you really want to say it's going to save the government money, which is proven it hasn't, but let's just go with that theory. Okay, fine. So you cut off benefits to the drug addict. Their kid can't eat. So either that kid or the drug addict, they're going to go commit crimes so that they can eat, or you're going to take that child away from the addict, put them into the system, which you'll probably spend more money having this kid in the system than you would be saving taking away the welfare benefits from said drug addict.
It's the whole it's actually just another version of the whole cause and effect argument that you play out with closing all these Planned Parenthoods and forcing to teach creationism and cutting sex ed out of schools. If you cut out young people's ability to learn about sex, about safe sex and being properly educated about it, and restrict their ability to get reproductive health care like condoms, birth control, and you're going to see a spike in teen pregnancy.
Right.
And then that's more people that have to go on the government dime.
Right.
Because they have no other resources. And where does it keep happening? In Mississippi and Alabama and all these...
Well, see, that's because politics are about ideals. It's not about practicality.
It's so backwards, though, and this drug testing thing was just another example of backwards conservative politics, where it's social conservative politics.
Right, because if you're truly conservative, if you're a fiscal conservative, you know that drug testing welfare recipients is BS, and it's more expensive than just giving them the benefits.
And you keep your legislative finger out of all these different policy pies. You don't...
Right, keep the government out of my business.
Exactly. Which, in this whole neoconservative movement that we've seen...
Unless the government's giving you money, then they own you, bitch.
Of social conservatism, where, again, it's been just enforced... try to add more laws, add more restrictions, just continue to pen in women, continue to pen in black people and other people of color, and continue to pen in the LGBT community. That's all that they have tried to do. That's not freedom. That's not liberty that they're campaigning under.
We have to hit the road here. We'll be back next week. It's Turn the Radio Off on the Internet. Thanks for listening, Paul. Bye.